This is BBC News. Welcome if you're watching here in the UK or around the globe. I'm Maryam Moshiri and these are our top stories. Donald Trump becomes the first former US president to face criminal charges after an investigation into a payment made to a porn star. The charges relate to falsifying business records, which is illegal in New York. Mr. Trump denies any wrongdoing. Former England cricket captain Michael Vaughan is cleared on the balance of probabilities of using racist language towards former Yorkshire teammate Azim Rafiq. Russian and Belarusian tennis players are to compete as neutral athletes in Wimbledon this summer as the war in Ukraine continues. King Charles's state visit to Germany comes to an end, spending his final day remembering those who died in World War II. Hello and a very warm welcome. Donald Trump has become the first former US president to face a criminal prosecution. The charges relate to falsifying business records to hide a payment to a porn star, Stormy Daniels, before the 2016 election. In a statement, Mr. Trump said the Democratic authorities in New York were doing Joe Biden's dirty work, accusing them of interfering in next year's presidential election. The BBC's John Sudworth has more. Well, let's cross live now to New York and speak to CBS News correspondent Jared Hill. And John described this there as one of the biggest political moments in the US. And it feels that way, doesn't it? Does it feel that way from where you are? Exactly. OK, well, Jared, as always, it's good to get your insight. Thank you very much. Well, Todd Landman is Professor of Political Science at the University of Nottingham. Speaking to my colleague Martin Croxall a little bit earlier, he outlined why he believes it's taken so long for these charges to be brought against the former president. Strikes by security guards at London Heathrow Airport will go ahead from today after last-ditch talks failed to resolve a pay dispute. It threatens disruption at the UK's largest airport at the start of the Easter holidays. Here's our transport correspondent, Katie Austin. You're watching BBC News. We just want to bring you some breaking news now from the organisers of the Wimbledon Tennis Championship. They've announced that they will be allowing Russian and Belarusian athletes to compete at grass court Grand Slams as neutral competitors this summer. This is after having banned players from those two countries for the last 2 years. The All England Club and the Lawn Tennis Association said the move will be to avoid any endorsement of the war in Ukraine, and any athlete receiving state funding will not be eligible to apply. The organisation had, of course, banned players from the two countries last year after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. More, of course, on that coming up a little bit later in our sport bulletin and, as always, on our website. Right, let's bring you some news about the Oscar-winning actress Gwyneth Paltrow, because she's won a US lawsuit after being sued over a skiing collision in Utah in 2016. The jury ruled that it was, in fact, the claimant, a retired optometrist, Terry Sanderson, who was at fault. He's been ordered to pay her a symbolic $1 in damages, as well as her legal fees. Our correspondent Sophie Long was at the court for the verdict. That was Sophie Long reporting there from outside court in Utah. Now, the Cricket Discipline Commission has ruled that the former England captain Michael Vaughan did not use racist language when he told a group of Asian teammates in 2009 that there were too many of you lot during a conversation before a T20 match. In a statement released a very short time ago, Michael Vaughan criticised the procedure, saying the England and Wales Cricket Board invites claim and counterclaim. But he also said he still wants to continue to fight for change in the sport. He said it's been both difficult and upsetting to hear about the painful experiences which Azim has described over the past 3 years. The outcome of these CDC proceedings must not be allowed to detract from the core message that there can be no place for racism in the game of cricket or in society generally. He goes on to say the dismissal of the specific charge that concern me takes nothing away from Azim's own lived experiences. Well, our sports reporter Matt Graveling is here for us. And Matt, first of all, talk us through exactly what we've heard today. OK, Matt, thank you very much for explaining that to us so clearly. Thank you. The Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei says its profits fell by more than 2/3 last year as the company was hit by US sanctions and COVID-19 restrictions in China. Let's get more on all this from our business reporter Jagdeep Chima, who is in the business unit for us. And Jagdeep, tell us more. What's happened here? OK, Jagdeep, thank you very much indeed. The UK will join a trading bloc with 11 other countries across the Indo-Pacific, the CPTPP it's called. The government calls the agreement the biggest trade deal since Brexit. But by its own estimates, the deal will add less than 1% to the UK economy after 10 years. Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch has defended criticism the deal won't make up for lost trade with the EU. Now, the most talented and successful performers, directors and developers in the gaming industry have been recognised for their work at the BAFTA Games Awards. Millions of adults in the UK are gaming every day, and it's big business, bringing in more than £7 billion a year globally. Our gaming correspondent Stefan Powell reports now from the ceremony. The Gaming Awards there. More on that and all our stories on our website bbc.co.uk/news. Stay with us though, plenty more to come on the BBC.
As fighting continues in Ukraine, join our team for the latest developments.
The Russian lines are very close. In fact, we're hearing they're just maybe a kilometre away.
See the headlines as they happen with breaking news alerts in the app and get the full story with bbc.com/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.
This is BBC News. Welcome if you're watching here in the UK or around the world. I'm Maryam Moshiri. These are our top stories. Donald Trump becomes the first former US president to face criminal charges after an investigation into a payment made to a porn star. The charges relate to breaking the law by falsifying business in New York. Mr. Trump denies any wrongdoing. The Critic Discipline Commission has upheld complaints against 5 former Yorkshire players for using racist language, but former England captain Michael Vaughan has been cleared of using racist language towards ex-teammate Azim Rafiq. Russian and Belarusian players will be able to compete as neutral athletes at Wimbledon this summer after the All England club lifted the ban it imposed last year. They were previously banned in response to Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. Well, let's go back to that breaking news now. The organisers of the Wimbledon Tennis Championship have announced Russian and Belarusian athletes will be allowed to compete as neutral competitors this summer. The All England Club and the Lawn Tennis Association said the move will be to avoid any endorsement of the war in Ukraine, and any athlete receiving state funding will not be eligible to apply. Well, I'm joined now by our reporter Russell Fuller, who's at Wimbledon this morning. And Russell, first of all, talk me through what exactly has been said here. What are they saying to justify this change? OK. Russell, thank you very much. Russell Fuller there. Sorry, I got a cheeky question into Russell at the end, which I probably wasn't supposed to do, but thank you very much for answering that, Russell Fuller at Wimbledon for us. Now, police in the UK say they are hunting down those who helped drug dealer Thomas Cashman after he was convicted of the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool. Olivia was shot dead last August after Cashman chased a fellow drug dealer into her home. He'll be sentenced on Monday. The BBC's Danny Savage reports. There have been allegations of bullying, harassment and discrimination at every fire service in England over the past 5 years. According to inspectors, staff at a quarter of fire services reported racist, homophobic and misogynistic behaviour. Our Home Affairs correspondent June Kelly has more. That's Roy Wilshire there talking to my colleague Martine Croxall there. Now, ceremonies are being held today in the Ukrainian town of Bucha, where Russian forces have been accused of mass atrocities to mark 1 year since it was recaptured by the Ukrainian army. After Russian forces left the town, bodies were discovered scattered along the street, drawing widespread condemnation in the West. Moscow denies allegations of possible war crimes. From Bucha, our correspondent Hugo Bechega reports. That's Hugo Bechega there in Bucha in Ukraine. The Turkish parliament has voted to back Finland's application to join the North Atlantic Military Alliance. Finland ended decades of military non-alignment and decided to join NATO last May following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Well, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says it's a positive step forwards. Jens Stoltenberg there. Let's take a look now at some of the day's other news making headlines. 5 suspects have been arrested in Mexico for their alleged role in the deaths of 39 migrants in a fire at a detention centre on Monday. Authorities are facing mounting scrutiny over why the victims weren't freed once the blaze took hold. A final report into Canada's worst ever mass shooting calls for sweeping changes to end what it calls an epidemic of gender-based domestic violence. 22 people were killed in Nova Scotia nearly 3 years ago. Now, the King is in Hamburg today to remember those who died in the Allied bombing of the city in the Second World War. King Charles and the Queen Consort Camilla will also celebrate the Kindertransport, which saved thousands of Jewish children from the Nazis. Well, during his speech to the German Parliament in Berlin yesterday, the King spoke of a special bond between the UK and Germany. Well, earlier I spoke to Emily Gordine, political correspondent at the German network DW. She told me how the visit has been received. Now, it was a stadium name change that raised a few eyebrows last month when Bolton Wanderers announced its home ground will be renamed the Tough Sheet Community Stadium. It caused great amusement among fans who had a lot to say about the new name. But ahead of Bolton's Wembley date with Plymouth this weekend in the Football League Trophy final, John Watson's been finding out there's much more behind it. You've been watching BBC News. Stay with us. Plenty more to come. Bye-bye from me.
Hello, some very warm weather for the time of year continues across northern China, Korean Peninsula.